Here we are. Hello. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you again. I am Dan Rosenberg. I'm the director of the Visiting Writers Series here at Wells College. And I'm very happy to invite you to welcome you to the last event in our series. And I'll start, as I always do, by thanking the New York State Council for the Arts for their support over the years, which has allowed our reading series to grow and thrive, and has allowed us this semester to bring so many wonderful writers to our community. And given that we've gone all virtual this semester, I'm particularly pleased that we've been able to open out that community wider than we normally would be able to, and invite folks from all around the country to join us for these events. And tonight, I'm really thrilled that we're going to hear Ed Pavlić read. We're going to have a chance to talk, because it is always a delight to both hear his work and chat with Ed. The plan for the evening is pretty straightforward. I'll give a very brief intro to Ed Pavlić, who will read from his new book, Let It Be Broke, though he threatened / promised to maybe read different things instead. And so we'll see where it goes tonight. We're playing it a little bit loose, and that'll be fun and exciting. So maybe it'll be something else as he is reading, or as he's sharing his work and his thoughts. I want you to please avail yourselves of the chat feature. If you want to respond to a specific moment, you want to celebrate a particular turn of phrase, you want to ask a question, whatever it is, you write a message in the chat, and then between passages, I will jump in and give voice to what you have written in the chat, and then that will give Ed a chance to respond. And I want to emphasize again that is key to how we can maintain some of that small personal feeling that we get from these Wells events, even when we're all sitting here staring at screens far from each other. It's one of the things that I've always loved about the Visiting Writers series, is that we get to welcome these visiting writers into our community, and our community is small and close-knit, and we know each other well, and we get to bring people into that space, and it's a beautiful space. And so I'm hopeful that we can recreate some version of it here digitally in this way. So I will put in this chat right now just a link to Ed Pavlić's most recent book, Let It Be Broke, which is available from Buffalo Street Books. It's available anywhere, but the link is Buffalo Street Books, which is our local in Ithaca, community-owned independent bookstore, and it's a great place to support if you've got a few bucks to throw toward a book, and you're looking for a place where that money will do good. Buffalo Street is a great place to do it. So that's the plan going forward, and I will just tell you briefly. I normally have these sort of these planned out introductions, but we just had this freewheeling conversation earlier in the masterclass with Ed, which Ed Pavlić framed for us as sort of a set of quotation marks that had been meaningful in Ed's own thinking and writing in several recent projects, and it was a way of sort of framing the position of Ed Pavlić, writer, thinker, human, in conversation with these other really important voices: Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, always and forever. Adrienne Rich didn't make it onto that handout, but appeared as a patron saint hovering over all of it. And Martin Luther King Jr. is in there. And I was thinking about the masterclass, which was on the mutual lyric, this idea that there's a conventional notion in thinking about the lyric that the lyric I is a singular voice, an individual who, in some sense, is striving to articulate his or their individuality. And that's part of what makes it the lyric, is that it is a singular speaker asserting their singularness. And Ed's argument in the masterclass, and the sort of motivating thought behind that conversation, was that is a model that has created some good things and some not so good things, but the model that has been fruitful and generative for Ed, which comes out of a tradition of like human aspiration, right? It's an aspiration from marginalized peoples to be allowed in from the margins. It's an aspiration of, you know, people who are trying to encourage their communities to rise up to a higher moral standard. That is where mutuality comes from, and that can be an aesthetic principle as well, that can be a way of understanding the role of the artist or the writer as someone who is, instead of giving voice to their own specific individual perspective, might be giving voice to a community, to their moment, to their time. And I think that Ed's work does this beautifully, whether it's in the poems that are from his most recent book, or any of the other genres of writing. He's written fiction, nonfiction, critical work. He's an editor. The range of texts that Ed has created is astounding, but what they share is that emphasis on mutuality. And I think it's really, it's such a beautiful thing for us to be thinking about tonight, and for us to be thinking about going forward into tomorrow and beyond. So I will tell you the bio: author of 11 books so far, with several more in the works right now. Most recently published is Let It Be Broke. Ed Pavlić is an American writer whose work travels across, often blurring, genres: poetry, fiction, nonfiction, scholarship. Centered in African-American and diasporic life and culture, most of his work explores racial dynamics in the experiences of persons, fictive, actual, historical, and contemporary, whose placement and perspectives aren't neatly classifiable. His awards include the APR Honickman First Book Award, the National Poetry Series Open Competition twice, the Author of the Year Award from the Georgia Writers Association, the Darwin Turner Memorial Award from African American Review. He is Distinguished Research Professor of English and African American Studies at the University of Georgia, and he lives in Athens, Georgia with his family. Ed, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your work and chatting with you.
Of course, thanks so much, man. Thank you. Yeah, I'm here in Athens, Georgia. Sadly, I don't live with my family anymore. Two of them grew up and left. I guess that's a good thing, but we're two of them are back in Madison, Wisconsin right now at school. But thanks, Dan, and thanks to the few of you guys who were in for the talk an hour ago. That was fun, and I think if you were there or not, we'll continue on somewhere along the lines we left off, and certainly along the lines that Dan was describing just now in introducing me, and also in kind of thinking about, you know, what I'm up to and what we were talking about. That was good to listen to. So I'm going to read a different thing. You know, this is the book Dan was talking about, a book I love very much. But I have to say, this book doesn't scare me to read from anymore. And during the COVID era, I'm doing fewer of these readings, and I like to read things that scare me to read more than things that I'm not so scared to read anymore. So let me do that. And so I'm going to read to you guys from a manuscript I'm working on. It's an autobiographical book. And it's titled, right now it's titled Like I Was Ink, which is a line out of a song called You Know I Got Soul, which was a 1988 song by Eric B. and Rakim, a hip hop duo. And the line goes, I start to think and then I sink into the paper like I was ink. So that's the name of the book. Like I Was Ink, Color and the Intimate Shades of American Experience. So I'm going to read to you a pretty, I don't know, as much as you guys can take, I guess, of this. And a few things to say, you know, to set up. Okay, so this piece of the book takes place in Madison, Wisconsin. The speaker is 15, and he's telling you about experiences a year ago when he was 14. He's actually playing a game of asteroids at an arcade at a mall, and telling the story of the previous year of his life, basically. And a few things to know that come up here that wouldn't be explained. There's probably some other things, but the main thing is that he is talking about when he's 14, coming back to live in Wisconsin after having been in LA, Los Angeles for the whole summer. 14 years old in LA when puberty hit this young man. And now he's back in the world that's familiar to him, but now in this new kind of hormonal environment in his body, he's kind of watching things fall in different patterns and watching people relate to each other in a way that's changed now because of these, physiological metabolic things going on in his young body. When he was in LA, the thing he noticed about puberty was that all of a sudden the waves at the beach were, he would watch them come up to the shore, but he would also have this strong sensation they were happening inside of him, and they wouldn't stop. The wave would hit and it would echo in his body in this way that he didn't recognize. And he was wondering why it was that the world now was taking place outside as it always had, but now was somehow newly present inside him in a way that he was unfamiliar with. And the other thing was that he was a great admirer of sports cars and fast cars and Italian cars and German cars. And now in LA, of course, unlike in the Midwest, there's a huge playground of these kinds of cars going up and down the streets, and he's fascinated by that. So he sits at you don't hear about this, but he was sitting at the corner and watching the cars go by and looking at what kind they were and so forth. And all of a sudden, he started to feel like the cars were also, they had fenders and bumpers like they used to have, but the fenders and bumpers now look like legs and shoulders and hips and calves to him. And he said, why are there these human bodies trapped in these cars walking by? And so he's kind of gripped with this sensation of a changed, perceptual universe of the senses and of feeling. And then the last thing is that he, all through the narration of this part of the book, he keeps coming back to this one line out of a 1977 disco song by a singer named Evelyn Champagne King. And the song is titled, I Don't Know If It's Right. And he keeps coming back to this idea, I don't know if it's right, but it's true. Or I don't know if it's true, but it's right. And he keeps, you'll hear several times him come back to Evelyn King in that song. So here we go. Like I Was Ink. You guys hear me okay? It seems like he never takes it off. Walker's new brown winter coat is puffy, and sometimes tiny feathers stick out like from a pillow. He doesn't even take it off inside. I think he's had it for a week or two. A tiny light brown feather floated down on the table just now when he came back with the hot peppers. We spent all the $5 Mary's boyfriend Bob gave us. They're getting married. Walker asked, I didn't, and Bob gave him the money. We took 2 quarters from the bus change jar to pay tax, so we each got 2 pieces and waters. We're at Rocky Rococo Pizza. They sell deep dish pizza by the slice. Rocky Rococo's on East Washington, down the hill from Ryandahl Park basketball court. We passed the court, but it's empty. It's too cold to play. When there are no gyms open, I play in the cold anyway. I play with mittens on till the ball won't bounce. Now Walker sits down, and plenty loud for me to hear, he says, that old fool steady clocking me when I walk past. You see him? Yeah, I see him. You know what he's thinking. What's he thinking? And now, loud enough for damn near people in the parking lot to hear him, Walker smiles and growls in his best imitation crotchety old man voice. Where them little niggas over there get $5 for pizza? We've been over this 100 times, so I know what's next. You running with me, so you a nigga up in here. You running with me, so you a nigga up in this motherfucker too. Walker rolls his neck. Oh, you don't believe me? I shake peppers on my pizza. I don't know if it's true, but he's right. It's in the way you say it. Nah, you right, you right. We look back at the man. He looks up at us, quickly looks back down at his food. And Walker flicks his chin at the man and loudly, yeah, I ain't think so. He leans back, pulls his shirt up, rubs his ashy belly with his ashy hands and laughs. When Walker laughs, his knees flap open and shut like he's swimming or some shit. And Walker can't barely swim at all, but he can laugh. I stare at the side of the man's face and nod. That man doesn't look back at us. Then Walker, quieter to me, I shit you not. That old man's face is pale and red. He just looks sad. It's in the way you say it. I'm looking at that old white man, but I'm thinking about the other old white man, the one we passed on our way here, the one just before who ran down his driveway toward the street yelling at us when we rode by on our bikes. I wonder, was he yelling at us? Since the first weeks of 8th grade last year, James Walker Jr. has been my best friend. It took a few weeks, but after we met, seemed like we'd always known each other. It was like it never started. I've never heard anyone call him James, no Jim or Jimmy either. It's either Walker or we call him Bo. He missed 7th grade at Marquette after being sent to Wales. Wales is the Ethan Allen School for Boys. It's called Wales, I learned, because that's where the mail gets sent. It's called School for Boys, I learned, because that's where you get sent when you get kicked out of school and the judge sends you to Wales. My other best friend, Keith, was also new to school in 8th grade. He came from Chicago, West Side, we learned, to live with his 3 cousins, Denise, Yolanda, and Damon. They all live on Mifflin Street with their grandmother and her husband. Can't nobody understand what Keith's grandmama's husband says. She calls him Roy, sometimes Royal. He talks and doesn't open his mouth or move his lips. Keith's grandmama is saved. She prays and calls loud to Jesus all the time. Lord Jesus, baby, you come here. Walker lives in the projects on Wright Street with his brother Anthony, who's a year older than us, and their dad. We call Anthony Tho, T-H-O, it rhymes with Bo. Their mother lives in Chicago, South Side, I learned. Tho's smart as hell. Bo said he always studies and he stay high. He's teaching himself French. All I know is Tho's like a foot taller than me, smiles his broken tooth smile, and beats my ass whenever he sees me. I know he's playing, but it still hurts. They also live with their father's wife and her 2 older sons. Their dad's wife is white. She's pale and looks like a witch. Then there's a sandy-haired 3-year-old baby brother everyone calls Sugar Bear. 8th grade started out strange. I was just back from Los Angeles and went to school on a city bus by myself. My mom takes an earlier bus. City bus drops me off on Johnson near Camelot Apartments. And even with a walk, I get to school early. First day I stood on the steps by the front door to school waiting for the doors to open. I felt a little strange, having been gone the whole summer and unsure about all the moves in the world. In me and all that. In front of the school, solid kids. They all look about the same as last year. Across the street from school, there's a narrow park along the Ohio River. There's a walking bridge to the other side. From up on the steps by the doors, I can see over the crowd of kids. Across the river, I see a kid running. There's another kid chasing him. I can't see who the first kid is. Maybe it's one of the Hanson twins. I hope so. One of the Hanson twins, I don't know which, sucker punched me last year. Just walked up behind me, stole on me. I had braces. I remember the metal taste in my mouth from my warm blood and pulling my lip free one at a time from each of the little silver posts on my teeth. Trouble with fighting twins is always 2 of them. I was alone, so I just kept walking and learned it's best not to walk alone. The second kid running behind him is black. I don't know him. He's way faster than whichever I hope Hanson twin he's chasing. Runs low to the ground, wears a bright green short sleeve shirt with a white stripe over the shoulder and down the sleeve. In a few seconds, the kid with the green shirt dives and the 2 roll on the ground, then a crowd surrounds them and I don't see the rest. A bunch of the kids run over the bridge to get a look at what's happening, but I don't. Next thing I know, locks open and we all go in and get our schedules. Look, in 7th grade, I knew who was black and who wasn't in our school. We all did. I knew Jim Pliner and his little brother weren't black. David Irvine wasn't either. Kevin Harness and his little sister were black. Yvette and Daryl and Carrie Simmons and all them are black. Kevin Albee wasn't. Junior Clark and his sisters were black. Denise Frazier was black. We all knew that. Bobby Connors and Tony Hilton, they weren't black, but they was rough in a way that made Bobby seem kind of black and made Tony seem way more white. Tony Craven said he was native. Arturo Almeida, Vincent and Sonia Teniente, they were Mexican. Raisa de la Rosa was something. Chuck and John Jones were black. Odell Johnson, black. Tyrone Henry, black. Robbie Burma, too. We all knew that. Me? I don't remember thinking about what I was and all that in 7th grade. But by early in 8th grade, things had moved, and it was very clear to me where I belonged. How did all that happen? And all that mattered in 7th grade. It must have, but so did who could run fastest, jump the highest, who was most likely to win a game of hustle or cheat, who would give you a dime at lunch, who played what in the band, who, like that kid Andrew, was already doing college math, and who, like Monty, got dropped off for school late, if at all, in a mid-1970s Chevy van with High Times painted on the side, in a tripped out mural with a naked lady floating in clouds with a purple dragon. We knew Odell would rather shoot at the hoop by himself, and he never looked at the hoop when he shot. No one asked him why. Even point game, Odell's shooting, he's looking across the street at the bus stop. He doesn't make that many shots, but the ones that do go in, they go in different. We all feel that. Like, don't go out there and get scored on by Odell and he ain't even looking at the hoop. We knew who came on what bus, who walked, who showed up at open gym Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday nights. We knew who stole 6-packs of Now and Laters and Bubble Yum at Sunshine Market and sold them for a dime each after lunch, and who had already been banned from the store because they stole 6-packs of Now and Laters and Bubble Yum at Sunshine Market and sold them for a dime after lunch. But even back then, before the waves and echoes, we all had a gathering sense that something that both was and wasn't us, both was and wasn't real, moved or something like that in a kind of blurry river nearby. Maybe it was close by, maybe not. No one could see it. But even then, I noticed how one person had already been banned from Sunshine Market and how someone else been banned from Sunshine Market and how it was different if you've been banned from Sunshine Market than if you had already been banned from Sunshine Market. I mean, yeah, they were all banned, but this was not the same shit at all. Last year, those blurry swirls of something hadn't really touched us, hadn't touched me anyway. And did we know it was in us? Was it? And between us, was it? 8th grade changed that with a quickness. The way all that band stuff moved had moved. It'd been moved. And I don't know if it's right, but it's true. So the bell rings. The doors unbolt, everyone flows into the building. First day of 8th grade, first period, my schedule says math. Mr. Blum. I go in and sit down. Math is easy for me. I can always get the work done in class, never take it home. It's best not to carry anything home. Because going home mostly meant Aladdin's castle. If it's warm, I'd run the 3 miles to the mall and save the bus fare for games. The mall's called East Town, but it's also called the Murder Mall because the year before we moved there, a black man and a white woman were murdered in their car in the parking lot. They were shot for being a black man and a white woman in their car in the parking lot. I know that. I always think of them when I cross it. We live across the street from the mall, right behind Holiday Inn. Mom leaves me money on the table, so I grab it and go to McDonald's. $5 buys 2 Big Macs, 2 quarter pounders, and a Coke. Heaven. Then I ride the bus back to school for open gym. Gym closes at 9:30. I ride the bus back home, unless I miss it, hanging outside or going through the neighborhoods with who's ever left hanging out after they close the gym. Jocko Pole and them come to the gym in dress suits and leather red shoes. They ride sleek racing bikes and carry a massive boom box. Some nights I miss the bus on purpose to hang out with whoever stays around with Jocko and them afterward. Jocko's big box blasting, talking about spread it with some jelly, peanut butter can't be beat. Music talking about share it with me. If I stay too late, then I walk back home. But I don't like to do that at night. It's 3 miles. Plus I go past the Aloha Inn and they say women get strangled in there selling sex. If I stay too late, I know because my mom leaves in the morning and won't say anything. I feel that silence too. And I feel like my mom pretty much now stays whoever she is when she's not my mom, like Kate said years ago. And whoever my mom is, most nights, whenever I come home, from wherever I've been, We sleep stuck together like spoons in the kitchen. Because mostly it's just me and her. It's the first period, the first day of 8th grade. And right away, some name right. There's no Junior, no Tony's, no John, no Sonia, no Tyrone, no Denise. I'm looking around and already wondering about next period, Mr. Newman, science. Then Mr. Blum makes us all stand up and reads the names. So we sit rearranged in alphabetical order. This puts me somewhere in the middle, directly behind Todd Minter, who talked nonstop all last year about his telescopes. Todd Minter's like the whitest kid in the world. And I don't know if it's true, but I know he ain't right. It's not the telescopes. It's the way he's always talking about them and the way he never knows when to stop talking. Even when listening to Tom Minter talk about telescopes, and I like telescopes, feels like dying. As Mr. Blum gets toward the end of the alphabet, I'm realizing one by one, all these kids in this class are white. That puts something else moving in me, both far away and deep inside. And for some even farther away reason, I remember Brian's older brother, Mark, touching my blue Pro-Ked's toe when we were kids. I know most of these kids' names, but mostly I know none of their names appear in the paragraphs above about the fastest, the highest, the lunchtime, diamondest, bubble yumminest, etc. I know none of them bim bam from nothing. I keep thinking mistakes. I don't know why. It's a feeling like being stared at, but the people staring aren't in the room. It's like being watched by people who you can't watch back. But whatever moves this moving was making was new to me. I know that this ain't no mistake. This is a lie. And I don't know if it's right, but it's true. Nope, there's nobody in this class at all. There are 2 kids from the band. Sandy plays trumpet and Lucy plays flute. Last year, I remember Lucy saying that after 8th grade, her parents are sending her to Edgewood, a private school, so she don't get hooked on drugs and pregnant. She said that shit like it was one word, hooked on drugs and pregnant. Then just before Mr. Blum is done with the names, in walks the low-running black kid with the green t-shirt. It's not a white stripe down his sleeves, it's 3 stripes, Adidas. He's got a fresh shag cut, brushed back little cuff by his neck. He stands there doing his best to look at nothing and nobody at the same time, look everybody all in the eye all at once. I can see that. He stands with his feet wide apart on the floor like he's standing in a strong wind or like someone's getting ready to knock him down or try. Or Mr. Blum doesn't try to knock him down. Is that a lie? He waves the kid over. Kid walks to the teacher, hands over his yellow schedule slip. Mr. Blum, Keith Alexander. Everyone shifts back a seat. Now I'm watching Hanson twin diving on, wide standing Adidas shag cut having Keith. Mr. Blum starts class with review problems on the board. The first was about, quote, order of operations. What do you do first in an equation, multiply or add? This was, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Mr. Blum starts with the alphabet, so it's Keith's question. Keith clearly doesn't know nothing about nobody's Aunt Sally. This is obvious to me and my hands start to sweat. Mr. Blum acts like he thinks Keith's joking and pushes him. Come on, take a minute, you know. I'd first caught it when he called our names, but now I can tell that Mr. Blum speaks to us in a weird way. Everything he tells us feels like a secret he's sharing with us. He speaks softly, a little extra slowly. I'd never heard a voice like that from a teacher. For some reason, I get a flashback of 7th grade French class and Mrs. Peters' outlined lips and her small brown nipples when she leaned down to help us with our work. And then Mrs. Hagar, who replaced her, crying about, with you, I'm born again. But this isn't like that at all. This happens in English, kind of. This is math, sort of. Keith stares at his desk and shakes his head like a minute is the last thing he needs to take. That minute seems like it takes an hour, and then Blum shrugs slowly and softly, moves down the row. Did Mr. Blum just shrug softly? I try to get Keith's eyes, but he either stares straight ahead at the board or down. I keep thinking about seeing that green t-shirt tearing down the street across the river. I keep feeling like there's nothing close in this room. For a minute, it's like we're in a spaceship, like something's missing, like maybe there's no gravity. And all the chairs are full, but I swear this room is empty. And I know that ain't right. but it's true. This is the first time I ever felt that thing where the room is full of people, but it still feels empty. After years, that feeling makes me feel a little crazy, but the first time, it just felt like a straight up lie. All that stuff over the summer with waves and echoes in me and cars with shoulders and hips and worse, it was like all that was impossible. Like that invisible and so mellow everything between people couldn't happen. There were kids all around, kids I knew. But all of a sudden it was like we, I thought, weren't where we appeared to be. I thought of carrying them out by the drive-in, talking about this movie, Foul, the Universal Soul Explosion, talking about this here, our shit. I remember that we were all right there in that feeling. I look around thinking, so where are we now? Like I could reach out, but I couldn't touch anybody. And I knew that was a lie. But still, somehow, this would be true even if I grabbed Todd Minter by his shoulders and shook him. I felt this created heat in my head, anger. Was I angry? Or cold? Was I cold? I felt a little dizzy. And I don't know, but it's true. And it was math, sure, but I knew it was a lie. How? Math? I could feel a new kind of moving and a kind of empty that you couldn't see and couldn't fill up. This empty was slow, soft, and secret, and it was a lie. It prowled the room. It crawled on my skin along my arms. It was looking for a way to get in. In what? In me? I look at Keith. I remembered how he was standing with his feet wide apart, like someone was about to shove him. I thought about Mr. Blum pushing Keith so softly, so slowly to answer his question, and then moving on. That softly shrug, that was a lie. While Mr. Blum talked about, we remember Aunt Sally, I wondered, if I look in this room from the outside through the window, could I tell if there was air in here or not? Would it look empty? But then it wasn't just math class. Each class that first morning of 8th grade is the same kids. I catch up with Keith after math. We stick close together through the morning. Keith stands there. Keith stands like there's a strong wind when there isn't. And he walks down a crowded hall full of kids like it ain't full of kids when it is. In between math and science, Keith tells me, look, I didn't come up here to take no shit, and I ain't. I nod at this because I don't know what it is. I don't say anything about the soft secrets I felt prowling in Mr. Blum's room. His secrets and whatever softly he was pushing. And then with whatever secret math had turned into moves. Mr. Blum moved on. I saw him do it with a soft shrug of his shoulders. At lunch, most of the this, and that, ist, and bam, bam 8th grade kids are at the back tables. Everyone's talking about who's in what classes and looking at each other's schedules for the afternoon. Ed, man, where you been? What classes you in? Junior says that at top volume, and everyone turns to look. Yeah, where you been? Tyrone says. Junior, Tony Hilton and me playing the drums in the school. We play drums in the school band. We heard the school has a drum set this year. Junior said he's getting ready to tear it up after school. I shake my head and point at Keith with my thumb. Other than him, nobody's in class with me. Keith steps over. Junior and Keith meet with a pound and a nod. And Junior, what's up with that? Keith and I both shake our heads and glance at each other. Don't know. By then, we're all moving out to the playground, the side door, for what's left of lunch period. Odell's already out there shooting by himself, steady staring across the street. After lunch, it's Mr. Eisenberg in 6th period social studies who explains that we've been put in an accelerated group for the year. It's a new class, created by teachers and a new principal named Johnson. I don't know what the other kids in that class made of this news, but it felt to me like a mistake. I already knew it was a lie. At least they admitted it now. But I look around and nobody looks like they heard what he said. They just sat there. Now I wondered, where? And was Eisenberg talking in that same soft sharing secrets voice that Mr. Blum had used? Maybe. Seemed like it. But I figured, whatever. It was only these soft secret classes. We still had gym, before school, lunch, after school, open gym Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights. We had a drum set in the band room. We could see how move there. Plus, at least Keith was in here. And as it turned out, it didn't move like that at all. Next day, Tuesday morning in math class, no Keith. When Mr. Blum softly called Keith's name and that chair was empty, I knew what had happened. I wondered, was it that Blum had secret softly pushed him, or was it Keith beating whatever Hanson twins ass before day one? Never found out. But at lunch, I find that they changed Keith's schedule, and now he's in classes with everybody else too. That left just me in this slow talking class, this accelerated soft secret group. I didn't know exactly, but I could feel this accelerated secrets thing wasn't about 0 to 60 or whatever. I could feel an invisible gauze stuck to me by mistake in a lie. And something in the moving in me in 8th grade wanted out of that accelerated soft secret group. I had no name for that thing, but it was something. I could feel it echo in me like the waves and the foam at the beach. I could feel Mr. Blum's softly secret voice push me. It felt like Brian's big brother Mark tapping my toe when we were little. Mr. Blum told us that our soft secret class would be algebra. If we did algebra this year, he softly shared, we could get to calculus before college. Fine. But all of a sudden, out of everything, I couldn't do the soft secret math. Me, I didn't get it. Couldn't focus. Math? It had always been the fastest, the easiest class for me. Never took it home. That was proof. Now, I just couldn't see it. Mr. Blum's nose breathing, his slow, soft speaking. Truth is, it wasn't about math. All I could hear was his soft, secret breathing like it was touching me on my toe. I recognized the way it burned. So I thought accelerated meant slow, soft, and secret. Maybe that was the lie. Somewhere buried in me too deep to know about was the feeling that this whole school was tapping my toe and calling me names. It was softly shrugging, calling all of us names without speaking, and then moving on. Couldn't they see how we moved, how we've been moving? Time crawled in those soft secret classes where the chairs were full, but now, all except one, the room was empty. Empty of what? I didn't know. I didn't ask. All I knew is I couldn't do the math. And I knew that was a lie. And I don't know if it's right, but it's true. I do know I got myself out of there. A meeting with Mr. Blum and the principal. You can't just switch math. You'd have to switch your whole schedule. That sounded great to me. Things started moving again after that. But the first thing was to get it straight with math. Mr. Blum gave me the workbook for the whole term, my first day in the new class. I took it home. I went straight home after school. No Aladdin's Castle, no open gym. I did the whole book that night, the whole term's work, one night. I gave it back to him the next day in class, and he said, "Class, I think Ed's trying to make a point." I noticed that he said that fast enough, and his voice wasn't soft, and no secrets here. And he was right about that. Damn straight he was. But as time went on, I just did what little work these new teachers and a few of the same teachers gave us, and kept my hands free for the trip to the mall, to home, back to the gym, back to home, for bed, where no matter how late I came home, and for wherever I was, I slept curled up with my mom, whoever she was now. Those nights at home, it was just us, another kind of us. How you guys doing? You guys all right? You hanging in there? Can we keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
We're in shop class. Mr. McConnell. We're making inlaid belt buckles. At first, we took thin strips of hardwoods, ebony, mahogany, black walnut, oak, cherry. We chose widths and glued them all together in blocks. We waited overnight, and then we used the bandsaw without cutting our fingers off to slice off a thin strip from the block we glued together. Then we sand and sand and sand and sand with smaller and smaller grit squares of sandpaper bent over another block of wood. This takes weeks, just sanding. As the grit decreases, the dust gets finer and finer. The surface of the glued together block of hardwood and strips cut without cutting our fingers off, cut rough by the bandsaw, becomes softer and smoother than anything you ever touched. Mr. McConnell speaks low. He talks quiet but not soft, and nothing feels secret here. He wears glasses and he has a neatly trimmed beard. He talks to us straight in our eye, almost like if it's point game and hustle. and the 10 boys blowing on your face talking about you about to go back to 15 and you saying that don't do nothing but help me. I don't say nothing like that to Mr. McConnell, but that's how he talks to you all in your eye. Mr. McConnell like a Estes Ben kid, but a man. His hand is heavy when he puts it on your shoulder and says, that's good work. Keep going. Last week in the back of the room, this kid Gene punched me in my gut when I turned around. I hadn't seen him there. It took a minute before I could breathe and get back up on my feet. McConnell, quiet at his desk, never looked up. He saw it though, and I was glad he didn't make it into a big scene for everybody. This week, we're making the metal frame for the now softer and smoother than anything we've ever touched wood block that we cut on the bandsaw without cutting our fingers off. Walker's in this class, but we haven't met yet. Walker tells McConnell that he had a piece that's softer and smoother than this piece of sanded wood. He says it loud and we all laugh, but I don't know why. At first, I thought Walker said he had a piece that's softer, a P-E-A-C-E that's softer. Probably not. McConnell says, focus, people. We make the metal frames we need for the we make the metal frames we need. Sorry, to make the metal frames, we need the soldering torch. There's a strange, skinny white boy in this class who wears his pants tightly belted, very high, almost up to his chest. Bruce is his name. Walker's been teasing him mercilessly and loudly about where his mama is softer and smoother than anything you've ever touched. This makes the air thick and electric. We stand in line. Then it's Bruce's turn with the torch. I'm thinking the blue flame of the torch is soft too. We watched when McConnell showed us how. The flame didn't blow away the silver specks before they liquefy. It's almost like it's not there, the flame, just blue and heat, like peace that's softer and smoother than anything you could ever touch. Then it's like in the winter when you drag your feet over the carpet and then walk up behind someone and almost touch them on the neck and spark. That's how it is when Bruce quietly and calmly gets the piece that's softer torch and immediately turns and dives with it toward Walker. Bruce screams when he dives. Walker sidesteps the lunging Bruce and punches him in his ear as he stumbles. Bruce drops the torch, it snakes around under the next work table. Walker holds Bruce by his shirt, slings him back and forth and pounds him in his face a few more times before McConnell dives on them both and breaks up the fight. Walker's laughing and calling Bruce one crazy ass white boy. You know that? You one crazy ass white boy fucking with me. Bruce ain't laughing though. And he stops screaming. He sits on the floor, holds his ear, stares at his legs. He mutters things in a hiss voice through clenched teeth. I can't tell what Bruce is hissing about exactly. He drools a little. Someone grabs the torch and turns it off. I'm watching all this and keeping one eye on Gene so he doesn't get behind me again without me knowing it. Usually one fight causes another. I know that. That shit spreads fast. And I haven't talked to Walker yet, but I've already seen him in action like this a few times. First time I noticed him was in gym class during the first week of school. We were supposed to be learning to wrestle. I heard a scream. So I looked across the field house, across the mats we'd rolled out over the concrete floor. Half the class on all fours, the rest kneeling behind partners waiting for instructions. And I see Walker standing straight up and spinning around with his partner crossways on his shoulders. An airplane spin, we all knew what that was. When we hear wrestling, we think turnbuckles and frying drop kicks, Wahoo McDaniel, Baron von Raschke, the claw, things like that. These weren't moves. These weren't the moves we were being told to practice. So Mr. Magestro, the teacher, he yells, "Walker, knock it off." And both stop spinning and drops the unlucky kid off his shoulders on the mat. I don't remember who. Could have been Junior. Bo likes to slap the shit out of Junior whenever they pass each other. In the hallway or in a layup line in basketball practice works. Hey, Junior, thwap. And Junior, oh, Walker, man. Junior's a big kid and open. Music lives in his body. I mean, lives. This comes out on the drums and at school dances where Junior's the whole show. His sisters, Lynn and Vanessa, they're older. They teach him. He says they practice at home in the basement with tapes they get from their cousins in Chicago. But I'm not sure you learn how music lives in you if it lives in you like it lives in Junior. A beat drops and that boy can float. He turns liquid, and I feel that like the waves and the echoes at the beach. We all do, I think. summer nights at open gym, Junior and his sisters practiced them fluid steps with routines with Jocko's box. Spread it with some jelly, peanut butter, can't be beat. Junior would fight if he had to, but no one's fucking with Walker, not even Keith. And Keith will fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. The first thing in 8th grade was about getting the fuck out of that soft, secret, full, empty room full of accelerated white kids and that slow teachers that spoke in voices like I'd never heard speak. Next, it was about finding a place to be amongst the move bodies in school that year. My way was shroud in sports, keep mostly quiet in class, and hold my own during the rest without actually having to fight for real. Then there was the whole nother matter. There were girls now. Girls were always around, but now they were moving through us like waves of echo foam and low growling cars on the street. They were girls now. I didn't really know what that meant, but as it turned out, girls had bodies that fit exactly and perfectly and soft and smoother than anything you ever touched alongside yours if you could find a place to sit next to each other. This was another kind of thing you couldn't see. But that exact and perfect softness was already there waiting the whole time. If you liked a girl already, then touching your bodies next to each other turned out to be close and a whole new kind of thing altogether, like it was another planet. That planet was between us too, the whole time. And something also whispered that if you touched a girl close with your body in that softer than anything way, then after that, you'd have to fight every boy in the class. Everyone would know you did it, and you'd have to fight. I don't know what told me that, and I don't know if it's right, but it's true. Soon enough, I'd have proof. Walker came back to school a week or two after the torch thing with Bruce. We had English together first period after lunch too. We're getting there, y'all. We had English together first period after lunch too. Mr. Tracy was from Scotland, and he talked to us in our class with playful respect. This was nothing like how he talked to the soft, secret, accelerated white kids. Half the time, we couldn't understand what he was saying, his accent. The other half, we weren't half listening. I don't think he minded if we listened or not, but I know he cared. Our English classes, Mr. Tracy reads to us for 50 minutes each day from Star Wars books, and then we get 8 spelling words on Friday. We each have a copy of The Empire Strikes Back. Mostly no one brings those books to class though. Mr. Tracy just reads. It's so great. You can draw. Monty, Delbert, and Keith, they sleep. As long as it's quiet. Mr. Tracy reads to us, and we didn't listen. But we must have heard something. At the end of each class, if there was trouble, he told us we were better than that. And if there had been no trouble, he told us we were great. He said that like it wasn't no secret either, but also kind of like with the toy in the cereal box. It felt like there was a secret in there if we looked. Maybe Walker got back to school at lunch because I don't remember seeing him before he sits down next to me in English. Mr. Tracy lets us sit anywhere we want. So Walker says, "Your name Ed, right?" I was surprised. If I'm honest, I was scared. Also, Walker said my name and it sounded much like Ed as Ed. I liked how that sounded. 2 syllables, or at least 1 syllable and some change. After a beat, I managed, yeah. And Walker, okay, so you know Bob. Bob? Yeah, Bob, he like my big brother now or some shit, and he's gonna marry your sister. Your sister getting married? Yeah. So that's Bob. I met him last night. He said his girlfriend's little brother went to Marquette. I said, yeah, I know who you are. You cool. You got a little game too. I've been seeing you play. You kind of sharp with it. That's how Walker and I met. About 5 minutes later, we're best friends. That was that. Everything moved like it moved on from there, like it was permanent. You guys all right?
Yeah. I'm
Huh?
no, I'm just looking in the chat. I'll invite folks to go ahead and jump in there if they want. But if you're happy to keep going a little bit there, Ed, I'm saying
Just for a little bit more.
Go for it.
See how this goes. Okay, the whole Vice Lords thing in 8th grade was Keith's idea. He called him the Vicky Lou. He said, no, my brothers, we got to get our own or we get got. Keith said his whole neighborhood in Chicago was full of the VAL, the Vicky Lou. The back tables in the lunchroom were now ours before school and at lunch both. That's how that came together. It wasn't no real gang. We were just together, that's all, and tight, close. Junior, Junior Clark, Bo Walker, Tyrone Henry, John Jones, Keith Alexander, me, and an ever-shifting rack of some other kids, Arturo, Bobby, a few others. Keith said, y'all niggas come on over here. Everyone knew who was over here and who wasn't. The teachers knew too. And Mr. Johnson, the principal, he knew. I remember Mr. McConnell said Mr. Johnson was very dynamic. He said it quiet, like it wasn't no secret about it. There wasn't no toe tapping here. It was us, and we rolled through the rest of 8th grade like that. We had a long list of handshakes and hand slaps, like mid-story, quick tap on the thigh of the next person to him. Yo, you tell him. I ain't got to say shit. Tell him. There were so many things you couldn't say by yourself. Someone else said it. That was the whole point. Other handshakes were complex arrangements with many stages, and they all ended up with the index and middle finger making a V and the thumb extended to make an L. All this repeated many, 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 many times in a school day and after school and whatever was after that and before school too. I won't lie. On one hand, it all seemed like a little much. All the handshaking and yo, you tell him in. But it felt good to see Tyrone Henry coming down the hall and know exactly where Tyrone Henry's palm would meet mine if we swung down super low to start whatever complex series of clasp and finger twists would end high above our heads with a VL signal. Tyrone's big teeth and something Jamaican lost, or as it turned out, hidden deep down in his voice. And it was exactly the same in 40 different ways as everybody else. A dozen times during class and a salad in the hall on the way between classes, those games of hustle, constant challenges, and being told, yo, Ed, you tell him. We were twisting ourselves into tangles that couldn't be taken apart. So we thought. That was what we had to think. In a way, we were right, but we had no idea what we were right about. That N-word thing, all those N-word everythings. I never saw the word written down. Not like we said it. I don't think the thought of writing that word out ever crossed my mind. And in a short time in 8th grade, the worst word in the world, the word that killed and you die away like in war, that word changed into a bouquet of ways to say, I love you, without saying I love you, and without giving up the option to still on someone if that's what it took. That was part of the tangle that couldn't be taken apart, the knot that couldn't be solved. That was us too. Those words flew, fell, stretched into pauses, slapped and smuggled between phrases, and like some silly putty pulled off color newsprint, it picked up images and matched itself perfectly to totally impossible shapes between us. Those shapes between us would also be inside us, but no one knew anything about that then. I know I didn't. This was part of how moving had moved too. And I'd had friends before, but I never had brothers. All that changed quicker than you could possibly think, but changed that quick it did, I'm telling you. The handshakes and head grasping hugs and pushing back felt like pulling in was how we proved it again and again and again to each other, to ourselves, to anybody and everybody who was watching. Forever, let them watch. Don't ever let them wonder. The field house had a concrete floor. We're almost done, y'all. The field house had a concrete floor. I spent so much time on those courts that winter, my fingers were all split open at the ends. I taped them all up and kept on, trying my hardest. Jocko and them and their bikes leaning against the far wall, that big box banging. The men even began to ask me to play if they needed one. I could feel all this happening, and I could feel the world watching all this happening too. Let them watch. Maybe that was part of it. Yo, you tell them. I knew one thing. All this sure as shit wasn't nobody's softly shared and accelerated secret. And I don't know if it's right, but it's true. Raisa de la Rosa's house was a great place to meet up after school. It was close by and her parents weren't there. She lived with her mom. We played their stereo, sat in the living room or stood in the kitchen. The SOS band with One Life Is All We Have to Live. The Whispers loving our thing. Yarborough and Peoples and everything we do right on time. Raisa de la Rosa sit next to me. I learned from I don't know who and I don't know when that when a dude stands too close, he's all up on you, and that's bad. And I learned from I don't know who and I don't know when that when a girl gets close to you, she's all up under you, and that's good. Raisa de la Rosa all up under me. We on the couch, Keith and them acting out whatever, yo, you tell them drama. about somebody all up on somebody who shouldn't have been all up under somebody else's somebody. The beat, the whole so mellow scene, this type everything did feel right on time. Don't stop the music. The whole scene so smooth, it blow your mind. There you go.
Nice. Thank you, Ed.
Hey, right on time. Look at
Look at that. Perfect. We're not,
all right, y'all.
we're not going to kick.
Minutes, right? We can stay a couple minutes over, yeah?
Yeah. If people have to go, by all means, thank you for coming. But I'm happy to sit for a couple of minutes. We had one person right already. Veronica here asked, if I mispronounced that, forgive me. Just asked, when are you hoping to have this out in the world? When might this be published?
Oh, if I can get done with it in a year, so 2023, I think.
Nice.
So I think I'm about 2/3 of the way through the book. Maybe, yeah, I think about 2/3 of the way through it. I think it's about 80,000 words. I'm probably about 60,000 words in. The kid is 19, 20. He's 20 now, like where I'm at in the book. So, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the sort of the impulse behind writing this story? And like, I can, having just read Let It Be Broke, there's something like, actually Walker appears in
Right.
in here as well briefly. Like there are elements of that sort of autobiographical impulse that are in here, but this is not a sustained narrative the way what you just read is at all. It's like, tell us about the impulse to sort of tell this story.
I don't know. It just felt like at this point, it felt like a story was necessary. Yeah, I don't know. It felt like a story is necessary. It felt like if I could call this stuff up in a bigger, truthful way than what lyric poems allow, I could, put myself somewhere that I'm not right now and I'd like to be, or something like that. Yeah. Because I feel like I don't know if everybody feels like this about their life or not, but I feel very much like the present I live in has stolen pieces of my life and hid them from me. And certainly in my life, yeah. And so I'm trying to regather some of that so I can put it back in place and then like walk with that stuff, if that makes sense.
That makes absolute sense. No, it does. And I think it's interesting. I just threw back in the chat here the link to Ed's most recent book, which is poems, but people are commenting. Shira offered up, hi Shira, good to see you again. Offered up that I love the way phrases repeat and come back later on, and the part toward the end where the words are stretching like the way putty stretches out the language. Just that whole part was especially amazing, and other people just talking about how much they enjoyed the reading, which is fantastic. And I agree. And when you said like it needed a story, I was actually thinking about how much I needed to be told the story tonight, in fact. And so I'm personally grateful for that. But yeah, I'm thinking about Shira's comment and just the lyrical impulse here. And it reminds me very much of a conversation that we touched on in the masterclass about how you write in these different genres, these different modes, but tend to blur them, right?
Yeah.
You tend to deploy the tools of each in the others in various ways. It's not a question that I'm asking really, I guess, but I'm just thinking about like.
I totally see that. And the idea of some repetition in what would be prose, but the kind of repetition in there, which gives it a kind of song quality in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and for this voice, it becomes part of that, like in the passage that you read, it's very much about not having intellectualized yet the world, sort of knowing some truths about the world, but not yet having the language for it. And I think the repetition captures some of that, where it's like, there's a thing I know and I don't quite have the words for it, but I'm just going to say the words I've got until the truth is audible.
Yeah. It's a strange illusion to try to pull off, because you, and once you want to reflect something of a 14, 15-year-old kid's mind, and the conundrums and the way this is all fresh and kind of scary and powerful. But at the same time, you're looking back at it as an adult and things, and there are ideas going on that are like between the author and the reader that the kid isn't really part of,
Right.
So, and I didn't want to, yeah, it's a hard one. It's just hard to figure out how to be in that space. Yeah. To kind of go from it, maybe.
Yeah, Patricia Hempel talks about that doubling that happens in nonfiction, where you are both the author organizing the experience and the character having the disorganized experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky space.
In both ways at once, And also, of course, part of the thing, I think, as I say, the world steals parts of our lives and hides them from us, but we do it ourselves, of course, because we all have memories of things and stories we tell about things, and in rehearsing those things, we lose other things. And part of what happens in work like this, of course, is you go back and you have to re-narrate it. You have to reimagine it all. And then, like in the Chiesi, in the Chiesi quote from the previous talk we had, new things pop up, like memories really are recovered in that space, reimagined, recreated, and recovered all in the same, and it's not exactly true. You're not exactly sure which is recovered, which is reimagined, which is made up. It all goes in nonfiction, but of course you can't remember all these conversations verbatim, but weirdly, when you start to recreate them, it's strange, the verbatim shit that does really come back.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually. Like, it's so, like, these scenes are so detailed and the situations are so sort of richly described. Did you do some like research? Did research constitute like talking to friends from back in the day and being like, hey, do you remember this?
I haven't really done it, I haven't. And part of the sad thing is a lot of these guys I totally lost track of. And, Keith and Bo ended up in big time prison sentences, multiple ones. So I haven't, I haven't been able, well, Bo Walker has reconnected with me at various, like every decade or so. He'll find me, but I haven't heard from him in a long time. I'm in contact with a couple, John Jones, Chuck Jones, a couple other guys, Junior Clark, Jim Pline, or some, but I haven't shared this work with them. At some point, I think I will. A couple of those kids from that whole crew, were able to kind of get out of that moment and make their way through the world in a way, and others got trapped in, I mean, it's been complex. So I haven't really done that. At some point, I think I might, but I haven't done it yet. I kind of wanted to get through something first. But I'll tell you what, man, it's really like when you lie down and you go out in the country, at night, you lie down and you look at the stars, and at first you don't see too many stars, but if you can get dark enough and you can sit there long enough, the stars start to multiply, your pupils open up and your night vision starts to take effect, and it really is that kind of process. If you can just sit there with it, stuff comes back, and it's really powerful. I guess people do this in therapy, but I don't do that. So, but that thing about, like, the surface kind of opening up and things starting to peer through. Well, of course, we catch that happening in poems all the time. That's kind of the magic of poems in so many ways. But in a narrative, it's, I don't know, it's on another scale somehow. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking, I know maybe just this last thought, because you're thinking about, I'm thinking about the sort of the mutual lyric was the subject of that masterclass, and thinking about the mutuality of what you just read and what you're describing, and how insistent your narrator, Ed, the kid Ed, is about what we know, right? Like there's a very self-conscious locating of the self in a community happening for him. And it's the ethics of that are so complex. And when we talk to nonfiction writers, when we bring nonfiction writers to the series, often the conversation veers toward the ethics of nonfiction and how to tell one's own story is inevitably to tell the stories of the people around us,
Absolutely.
but explicitly not from their perspective, right? Like I'm not telling my parents' story when I'm telling the story of my childhood, but my parents are characters in mine.
Yep.
And how to navigate the ethics of that, and how, like, the way I just described it centers the individual self again in a way that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Most of your work is trying to open up out of into a sort of broader,
Yeah.
I don't know, ethical and aesthetic position. So simultaneously, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, in nonfiction, that seems like a doubly tricky path to walk.
Yep. That's the path though. But it is, it's yeah, it's complex. It's definitely complex. But I think, you know, like I say, just you're right. And that's kind of the whole point in a way, especially in this moment in that book, is this idea that, for me at least, you know, there were years where, man, you know, I barely knew whose arm was whose. You know, I don't know, I was thinking my thoughts or your thoughts, or I was telling my story or yours, or you were telling mine. I know one thing though, like, you know, whoever I am right now on this screen is not that person without those people. And does he even survive it? You know, certainly not with some hospital thing, because those dudes saved my life. You know, we're getting to that.
Mhm.
But there were, you know, specific moments, and you know, talk about like what it meant to have friends and dudes in my life who didn't think twice before jumping into something. I'm thinking twice, 3 times, 4 times. How are we getting around this? How can I get, not even the thought before you're in there, you know, and how, like, it's like the dude who jumps on the grenade, you know, and saves the platoon. It's the same type of thing, that mentality. And I owe that mentality. So I owe it everything. It's not my mentality exactly. It's also a part of my mentality, because people who aren't me say, dude, you're way over your skis. Like in everything in your life, you're so far over your skis, bro. But I don't see it that way. I think I'm quite careful, you know, partly because I grew up with a big sister who was shot straight out into the stratosphere. And these friends of mine who were aggressive in these really, really important ways. I mean, like, yeah, totally important ways. And guys, you know, who were much more mature than I was for all kinds of reasons, physically as well as socially. And how it meant everything to grow up with that kind of company in a way I did. Totally everything. And then I wonder, because my memory is that the whole thing just gets blown to shreds. And I wonder if most people don't feel that way. And I wonder if that's not something real about the world, this country, you know, the way it just tears people to shreds, and we watch. You know? And I don't know if that's true for working class life or for, you know, Black communities, whatever, non-white communities. I know that's true in ways. I think it might be true for every single body in whatever way. But I haven't met all that many healthy communities out there. Dan, I think you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, we put on a good front.
Yeah, there's the thing, right? We perform these things, you know. Anyway, so yeah, that sense of the mutual is what this is all about for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then trying to trace how you come out of that and into what, you know, and then what. Yeah.
Oh, well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Ed, for
I mean,
sharing this with us all. This has been so great. I love it. I put in the chat here already the series of quotes from the masterclass, just for people who want to continue having these thoughts about mutuality that Ed ended with. These are words to get you carrying on in those lines of thought. And I also put in there the link for Ed's most recent book, but there's a lot more out there and a lot more coming. For our series, though, this is our final event for the semester. We'll be back next semester with more readings. Some will be virtual, some might be in person. We don't know. Who knows anything anymore? But it's coming up. And so I want to take this opportunity to thank several of you have been to many of these, and I really appreciate you coming out and joining us on these events, and thank you all for participating tonight and chatting. And you can see, Ed, all the excitement in the chat and appreciation for what you shared. It's beautiful. And so thank you all again for coming out tonight. And Ed, thank you so much for joining us and being our closer this semester. It was a real treat.
Awesome. Pleasure is all mine. Pleasure's all mine. Pure pleasure, y'all.
Awesome. Well, listen, everybody, you have a good night. You stay safe, and I hope to see you all in the fall, if not sooner.
Be well, people. Stay healthy.